in Ukraine isolated America. The war in Ukraine has isolated America from the world. Ukraine's proxy war continues. February 2020 marks the anniversary of this new phase of the conflict. But the war actually goes back to 2014, when the US faked a coup in Ukraine that overthrew its elected government and escalated the conflict. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has publicly warned that this could escalate into a conventional war between the US and Russia that could turn into a direct military war between NATO and Russia, and therefore a global catastrophe. The possibility of change is such a thing which we should not discount, and in the meantime there are prominent Western intellectuals are admitting that this is essentially World War III, which is exactly what a prominent French public intellectual claims to be well named. And they didn't do an interview in French about it and translated some key points into English. I probably have a link to it in the description below on geopoliticalcounty.com. USA and Russian relations, where you can find all the sources I discuss in today's episode. US-Russia relations. Has the war in Ukraine isolated America? Now, this was an interview of this French public intellectual thug that he did with the major French newspaper Le Figaro, and it is based on a book that he published but is currently only available in Japan. It was published in Japan in 2022 and it's literally called World War III. That's why the CM gap has started, and so in this interview, the French intellectual made some interesting points that if I ever said goodbye, you'd say to an independent journalist. You know, they will be cursed. This is similar to the so-called Russian disinformation or whatever it is that this French intellectual thug said, that the proxy war in Ukraine exists not only for Russia but also for the US, because it is challenging when he referred to it as the US. The imperialist system said that the West's failure to crush the Russian economy shows that I am reading an exact quote of the resistance of the Russian economy. USA and Russian relations. The war in Ukraine has isolated America from the world. USA and Russian relations, Sino-Russian relations, speaking to us today on the development side of Russian relations. You'll learn that the national security strategy is to locate China and Russia within 55 miles of the United States because relations with these two countries have deteriorated in the past. It has gotten worse over the past 2 years. Over the years we've seen cooperation between the two grow in many areas, with many in the city beginning to question what this means for the long-term significance of the rock Pokemon are from Russia and China. Read more. What will happen if the US goes to war with Russia? What does their cooperation mean in moving towards an alliance? Actually, right, as a large part of China, do you have points of convergence? Of course. There is a divergence of national interest. Again, no correspondence was found where they know that it's somewhere they overlap. It's quite natural in both capitals. It's somewhat natural, but I've really worked hard to bridge the gap, and there's a lot of history of relationship over many centuries. At all consits that they should avoid confrontation, that it would be much more desirable for this security if you had several political declarations on the new stage of the comprehensive partnership, and the new origin of strengthening the focus of the global certificate. Access to settings that were expressed in 2016 $200, a sheet where I affirm the common cause that force should not be used or not used, and what benefits the deployment of ballistic missile defenses around the world on Saturday. The A Times told that it was kind of unnecessary, while also allowing him to go to a corporation. And things are different organizations like an organization, and we've seen two reasons why there's a lot of discussions, and here's the operation going on. It's probably important to keep this in mind as well. During this year the Security Corporation has also arrived, and you have not mentioned that according to Russian military experts, Both countries have reached the brink of all these threats technologically. USA and Russian relations, Sino-Russian relations, USA and Russian relations. The war in Ukraine has isolated America from the world.